13 plants. That's genuinely all that stands between anyone and never buying another bag of chicken feed again. 50, 70, sometimes over $100 a month currently disappears into commercial feed purchases regularly. That feed gets loaded into a truck, hauled home, poured into a feeder, and repurchased again next month endlessly. What if a property could instead grow everything a flock genuinely needs directly on site? Protein, calcium, carbohydrates, and vitamins can all come from plants that grow back year after year automatically. These aren't experimental garden projects. These are proven ancient feed systems predating bagged pellets by centuries. Feed companies stay quiet about these plants because growing feed at home breaks their entire business model instantly. By the end of this video, 13 specific plants get identified along with how to layer them across a property. Specific mistakes that cause most people to fail before even getting started also get covered in detail. Here is something rarely discussed when it comes to feeding chickens on any small backyard property. Commercial feed prices have nearly doubled across the last 5 years without much public attention paid to it. A bag that cost $15 not long ago now runs $25 to $30 or more. A small flock of 10 chickens burns through 3 to 4 bags of feed every single month. That works out to $75 to $120 monthly, just to keep birds properly fed. Across a full year, that adds up to $1,000 or more, with the number still climbing. Cost isn't even the worst part of this entire arrangement when it gets fully examined honestly. That kind of dependency rarely gets questioned until a price spike forces the issue into plain view. Complete dependence on a supply chain nobody controls, with prices and availability entirely out of anyone's hands. Store shelves empty out, feed mills shut down temporarily, and delivery trucks get delayed without much warning. When supply tightens even slightly, prices spike even higher almost immediately across the board. What actually sits inside that bag rarely gets examined closely by most people buying it regularly. Standardized processed pellets get formulated to meet minimum nutritional requirements, not truly optimal nutrition at all. Fillers, byproducts, and ingredients that are hard to even pronounce fill out much of that mix. A flock deserves better nutrition. And frankly, a wallet deserves better treatment as well. Most chicken keepers genuinely believe no real alternative exists to this ongoing purchased feed cycle. They assume growing feed requires massive acreage, specialized equipment, and a formal agricultural degree to pull off. That belief is exactly what the feed industry benefits from people continuing to hold on to. The moment a handful of perennial plants replaces what's inside that bag, dependence quietly ends for good. That represents real power the feed industry has little genuine interest in anyone actually discovering. Chickens never actually relied on bagged feed historically. That arrangement is a fairly recent modern invention. For thousands of years, flocks thrived on diverse plants, seeds, roots, and insects found naturally around them. A supply chain nobody controls locally is exactly the kind of risk worth reducing wherever possible. They laid eggs, reproduced, and lived full healthy lives without a single manufactured pellet ever involved. What changed was never the chickens themselves. What changed was an entire system built around selling something. That something happened to be exactly what most properties could already produce on their own without much effort. Ancient farmers understood something modern agriculture would clearly prefer everyone simply forget entirely. Chickens are genuinely built to eat living ecosystems, not standardized processed pellets from a factory line. They evolved over thousands of years, consuming diverse plants, seeds, roots, and insects across changing seasons. Their digestive systems are built for genuine variety, thriving on fresh nutrition that shifts throughout the year. Ancient farmers never had feed stores, pellet mills, or modern supply chains to rely on at all. What they had instead was accumulated knowledge passed down carefully across many generations of careful observation. They knew which plants produced the most protein, and which stored energy underground through the winter months. They knew which plants grew back after harvest without replanting, and built entire systems around exactly that knowledge. Knowledge passed down through careful observation tends to outlast whatever trend happens to replace it temporarily. Farmers across Southeast Asia have grown a tiny floating fern to feed poultry for many centuries running. A fast-growing tree has sustained livestock across tropical Africa and India for countless generations as well. Medieval European farmers called one particular herb the healing plant, feeding it to every animal on the homestead. One tuber crop served as a staple for Native American communities long before European settlement ever occurred. None of this represents new science. This is simply forgotten wisdom worth actively rediscovering today. Modern commercial agriculture never improved on these older systems. It simply replaced them entirely over time. That replacement never happened because pellets offered better nutrition. It happened because pellets proved easier to sell. Nobody can put a real profit margin on a plant that grows itself forever in someone's backyard. So that knowledge got buried and pushed aside, replaced instead with convenient bags and recurring monthly bills. The plants themselves never actually went anywhere, though. They kept growing and producing the entire time regardless. They simply waited quietly for someone smart enough to put that older knowledge back to practical use. 13 specific plants follow, covering every nutritional need a flock has: protein, calcium, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals. Each one is perennial or self-seeding, growing reliably across common U.S. climate zones without special intervention. Each one keeps producing year after year without any need for annual replanting or fresh seed purchases. First, Comfrey, arguably the single most powerful plant appearing anywhere on this entire list of 13. Comfrey contains 20 to 25% protein by dry weight, comparable to alfalfa, and higher than most grain mixes. It carries heavy loads of calcium, vitamin A, vitamin C, B12, iron, magnesium, and phosphorus all together. That covers everything laying hens need for strong shells, healthy feathers, and genuinely consistent egg production. Here is what makes Comfrey truly stand apart from almost everything else on this entire list. Planted once, it produces for 20 to 50 years without any replanting, reseeding, or annual soil preparation required. Roots survive winter safely underground and push fresh new growth automatically every single spring without fail. Harvesting actually stimulates more growth, since cutting it back brings the plant back faster and thicker afterward. One mature plant yields 30 to 50 pounds of fresh leaves annually from a single established root system. 10 plants together provide 300 to 500 pounds of free chicken feed every single year. Spending $1,000 annually on feed, with Comfrey replacing even 30%, saves roughly $300 yearly. That savings comes from plants costing just $5 to $10 each to originally start growing. Planting along garden edges or near a coop works well, since Comfrey tolerates clay, sand, and drought easily. It grows reliably across zones 3 through 9, handling rocky ground, and neglect without much complaint at all. Leaves get stripped and tossed to a flock fresh, or dried for longer-term winter storage instead. This single plant alone could genuinely reshape an entire household's feed budget over just a few short years. A plant producing for decades from one planting is rare enough to deserve real attention on its own. Second, moringa, a fast-growing protein tree that outpaces Comfrey in sheer speed of production. Moringa leaves contain 25% protein on a dry matter basis, higher than most commercial feeds available. They pack vitamins A and C alongside calcium, exactly what laying hens need for vibrant yolks and strong shells. Chickens genuinely rush toward fresh moringa leaves before touching anything else sitting in a standard feeder. A single tree can reach 10 feet tall in its very first year of growth alone. It produces several pounds of leaves per harvest, with harvesting happening every 2 to 3 weeks throughout the season. Leaflets simply get stripped from branches and fed fresh, or dried for later storage as needed. A tree reaching 10 feet in 1 year is a pace few other feed sources can realistically match. In warmer zones, moringa grows year-round outdoors, without much additional care beyond basic watering. In cooler zones, it dies back in winter, but reliably returns from roots the following spring. In the coldest zones, growing it in large containers brought indoors during freezing months works perfectly well. This tree has fed livestock across tropical Africa and Asia for centuries, proving itself repeatedly across generations. It isn't a passing trend, it represents proven agriculture that feed companies would rather stay undiscovered. Third, azolla, a tiny floating aquatic fern that doesn't even require soil to grow successfully. Azolla contains 25% protein, plus essential amino acids, vitamin A, B12, iron, and calcium combined. It doubles its mass every 3 to 5 days, making it the fastest producing feed source covered here. No land and no good soil is required, just a shallow container, water, and a starter culture. Filling a shallow container with 4 to 6 inches of water and floating a starter culture works immediately. Placing that container in partial sunlight completes the entire setup process from start to finish. Every few days, half the azolla gets scooped out and fed directly to a flock of chickens. The remaining half regenerates back to full coverage within just a few more days after harvesting. A single small pool produces several pounds of fresh feed weekly from that simple, low-maintenance setup. 2 or 3 containers can cover a significant portion of protein needs for 6 to 10 birds. Families across Vietnam, India, and the Philippines have used this exact system for generations without issue. It works reliably across warmer zones during the growing season, though extreme heat above 95 degrees causes crashes. Keeping multiple backup containers protects the overall supply against any single unexpected crash occurring. Chickens rushing toward one specific plant over everything else in a feeder says something worth noticing. Fourth, Jerusalem artichoke, an underground energy bank storing feed below ground rather than above it. Most plants on this list feed chickens from above ground, but this particular one works differently. This perennial tuber crop produces carbohydrate-rich tubers underground every single fall without fail. Those tubers pack inulin and sustained energy, exactly what a flock needs when fresh greens grow scarce. Stalks grow 6 to 10 feet tall and can be chopped for roughage throughout the entire growing season. Chickens eagerly eat chopped tubers and stalks together, getting both energy and fiber from one single plant. This particular plant self-seeds aggressively, returning every year automatically, without any need for replanting whatsoever. Tubers left in the ground overwinter sprout again in spring, continuing that cycle indefinitely on their own. It thrives across zones 3 through 9, tolerating poor soil, drought, and general neglect without much issue. Even in the coldest zones, tubers survive frozen soil and emerge vigorously again once spring arrives. Harvesting weekly rather than digging an entire patch at once keeps tubers fresh right in the ground itself. The soil essentially functions as a built-in storage bin, requiring absolutely no additional infrastructure at all. Fifth, tree collards, a perennial green that never really stops producing, even through winter months. Most greens grow as annual crops, producing once before dying back and requiring replanting the following year. Tree collards break that entire cycle, growing 6 to 10 feet tall and producing continuously for years. A single planting can keep producing large, nutritious leaves for 5 to 10 years without interruption. They pack vitamins A, C, and K, alongside calcium, iron, and beneficial antioxidants throughout their leaves. In warmer zones, they stay productive almost year-round, even through light frosts that kill other plants. Outer leaves get harvested weekly and tossed straight to a flock, while the plant regrows continuously from its center. 4 to 6 plants can supply consistent greens for a small flock across an entire growing season. Since tree collards rarely produce viable seeds, propagation happens through cuttings taken from an established plant. Cuttings root reliably in either soil or water within roughly 2 to 3 weeks under normal conditions. They prove more cold tolerant than moringa overall, making them a better choice for colder northern climates. Sixth, sunflowers. A homegrown energy seed packing real punch for hens during heavy laying periods. Sunflower seeds carry roughly 20% protein by weight, along with healthy fats and vitamin E. Water-based growing removes soil quality as a limiting factor entirely, which matters on poor or rocky land. That represents concentrated energy hens genuinely need, since egg production burns through calories at a fast rate. Sunflower seeds deliver those calories efficiently, while supporting reproductive health and overall feather condition simultaneously. Black oil sunflower seeds work better than striped varieties, being smaller and easier for chickens to actually eat. They also carry higher oil content, adding extra nutritional value compared to standard striped seed varieties. These grow well across a wide range of zones, proving drought-tolerant once properly established in the ground. Redundant containers for water-grown plants cost little compared to the risk of losing an entire culture. Farmers across Eastern Europe and Russia have traditionally grown sunflowers specifically to feed poultry for generations. Letting heads dry fully on the stalk before tossing entire heads into a run works remarkably well. Chickens will pick every seed clean off those dried heads without leaving much behind at all. One 10-foot row can produce pounds of completely free feed across a single growing season alone. 7th, white clover, a living feed carpet hiding in plain sight across most ordinary backyards. White clover is a perennial, nitrogen-fixing plant that spreads aggressively while tolerating regular foot traffic well. Planted once in a run or grazing area, it reliably comes back every single year afterward. It fixes nitrogen directly in the soil, actually improving ground quality while simultaneously feeding a flock. No fertilizer gets needed at all, since the plant effectively feeds both itself and the chickens together. It grows well across a wide range of zones, thriving in both full sun and partial shade equally. It handles clay, sandy soil, and everything in between without much complaint or special care required. Using it in a rotational grazing system, letting chickens graze one section while another section recovers, works best. Clover regrows quickly, providing fresh forage every single rotation cycle without needing reseeding between rounds. Combined with everything else on this list, clover fills a ground-level forage gap most feed systems miss. 8th, dandelion, a plant worth feeding rather than pulling and discarding as an unwanted weed. Dandelion packs calcium, iron, and vitamins A and K, growing absolutely everywhere without requiring any real help. Chickens devour the leaves, flowers, and even the roots of this common, widely available plant. It functions as a free, self-seeding superfood that most people mistakenly treat as nothing but a weed. Ancient farmers understood its value and deliberately let chickens forage dandelion patches whenever they appeared naturally. 9th, plantain, the common broadleaf weed growing in most yards rather than the tropical banana fruit. An underground storage system requiring no infrastructure at all is a rare advantage in any growing plan. Plantain carries real calcium and vitamin content alongside natural anti-inflammatory properties worth genuinely valuing. Chickens eat it readily wherever it grows, and it grows across essentially every US climate zone reliably. It tolerates foot traffic well and comes back year after year without needing any deliberate replanting. 10th, chickweed, a cool season annual that self-seeds so aggressively it behaves almost like a perennial. It carries high protein and mineral content, growing well in partial shade under cool, damp conditions. Those exact conditions tend to be where many other plants on this list genuinely struggle to thrive. Chickens eat it right down to the ground, and it simply grows back to repeat the cycle. That pattern typically repeats reliably through both spring and fall across most temperate growing regions. 11th, amaranth, containing 13 to 15% protein in its seeds, along with fully edible leaves. A tuber crop thriving in neglected, poor soil removes yet another common excuse for not trying it. It self-seeds reliably across a wide range of zones, coming back on its own each following season. This ranks among the highest protein grains realistically achievable from home growing without special equipment. 12th, duckweed, a close cousin to azolla that floats on water in a similar fashion. Duckweed carries up to 40% protein by dry weight, actually surpassing azolla's already impressive numbers. It grows in any still water source available, including ponds, barrels, or simple drainage ditches nearby. It doubles its mass in just 2 to 3 days, growing even faster than azolla under ideal conditions. Keeping it in a separate container from azolla lets both plants run, without competing against each other directly. Together, they deliver genuinely massive protein production from water alone, requiring almost no land whatsoever. 13th, nasturtium, a plant pulling triple duty across multiple different functions on a single property. Nasturtium functions as a natural dewormer, an immune booster, and a genuinely nutrient-dense feed plant combined. The entire plant is edible, including leaves, flowers, and seeds, offering flexible feeding options throughout the season. It self-seeds annually across a wide range of zones while also repelling certain garden pests naturally. Chickens eat it readily, and it has traditionally been used to support flock health without chemical dewormers. Together, these 13 plants cover protein, calcium, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and even natural health support combined. This isn't simply replacing feed. It represents building a complete, self-renewing nutrition system from the ground up. Honestly, replacing chicken feed with plants sounded like wishful thinking the very first time it got mentioned seriously. A plant that keeps producing through frost while everything else goes dormant earns its place easily. Close to $90 a month was going toward commercial feed for a flock of 12 hens. That worked out to over $1,000 a year just to keep those birds properly fed. Every trip to the feed store, revealing another price increase, made the whole situation feel increasingly frustrating. So testing this approach seemed worth trying, though not everything got attempted all at once from the start. The first spring, 10 comfrey root cuttings went in along a garden fence for roughly $40 total. A moringa seedling went into a large pot positioned near the coop shortly afterward as well. 2 kiddie pools got set up with Azolla starter cultures, ordered online for around $12 total. Genuine skepticism remained throughout that first setup, expecting the whole project to feel like more effort than reward. By midsummer though, those comfrey plants were growing explosively across the entire fence line area. Leaves got cut every 2 weeks, and the chickens devoured every single batch offered to them. The Azolla pools were producing faster than the flock could even keep up with eating it. Fresh moringa leaves mixed into morning feed led to noticeably darker yolks within about 10 days. By the end of that first season, commercial feed purchases had dropped by roughly 35% overall. That represented about $30 a month staying in pocket instead of heading to the feed store. Year 2 is when everything genuinely clicked into place across the whole growing system at once. Comfrey came back noticeably bigger, and Jerusalem artichokes went in along the back fence that same spring. Tree collard cuttings went in near the run, adding another reliable perennial green to the whole rotation. White clover took over one section of the yard, running as part of a rotational grazing system. The feed bill dropped close to 50% that year, down to roughly $45 monthly. Hens were noticeably healthier too, with brighter feathers, stronger shells, and more consistent laying through fall months. Complete skepticism turned into full conviction, not because anyone claimed it worked, but from watching it happen firsthand. Now for the mistakes worth avoiding, the ones repeated over and over by people trying this system. First mistake, trying to eliminate commercial feed entirely overnight, which stands as the single biggest error possible. Rotational grazing turning one section of yard into fresh forage repeatedly is easy to underestimate at first. Bagged feed cannot simply get ripped away and replaced with plants immediately on day 1 of transitioning. A flock's digestion needs real time to adjust, and plants need time to establish enough volume first. Layering several plants together fills nutritional gaps no single plant could ever cover completely alone. Supplementing 10 to 15% of a diet with homegrown plants makes a far better starting point. Gradually increasing that percentage over weeks and months avoids the problems that come from rushing this transition. Rushing leads to weight loss, dropped egg production, and frustrated keepers giving up before the system proves itself. Second mistake, growing only a single plant instead of layering multiple different plants together across a property. Comfrey alone won't provide complete nutrition, and neither will moringa alone, no matter how impressive either seems. No single plant delivers complete nutrition on its own, which is exactly why 13 plants appear on this list. Layering multiple plants across a property ensures nutritional gaps get filled from every possible direction simultaneously. At minimum, 1 protein source, 1 energy source, and 1 mineral source should all be present together. Third mistake, ignoring local climate zone entirely when selecting which plants to actually plant and grow. Moringa is impressive, but it simply won't survive outdoors through a harsh winter in a cold zone. Azolla crashes above 95 degrees, and Jerusalem artichoke spreads aggressively if left completely uncontained. Matching every single plant to a specific local climate zone before spending any money matters enormously. The best system realistically ends up being whichever one actually grows successfully in a given local climate. Fourth mistake, keeping no backup cultures for water-based plants like Azolla and duckweed specifically. Water-based plants can crash quickly, and one heat wave or contaminated water source can wipe out an entire culture. Keeping 2 to 3 separate containers running provides genuine backup cultures ready to restart if needed. Redundancy isn't optional with aquatic plants like these. It functions as genuine insurance against total loss. Picture this scene roughly 2 years from now, on a property running this exact layered system. Walking outside one morning means harvesting comfrey leaves straight from the fence line without much effort. A handful of moringa comes from the pot positioned near the coop, gathered in passing. Watching yolks darken within days of a diet change is the kind of proof that convinces even skeptics fast. Azolla gets scooped from the kiddie pool, and tree-collared leaves get tossed to the flock nearby. Real numbers tracked over 2 full seasons carry more weight than any single optimistic claim alone. Total time spent on all of that adds up to roughly 5 minutes from start to finish. Total cost for that entire morning routine comes out to exactly $0 spent anywhere. Hens end up healthier than they've ever been, with rock-solid shells and deep orange yolks consistently. Egg production stays steady through fall, a season when it used to noticeably drop off before. No feed store visit has happened in weeks, and rising feed prices barely register anymore when they occur. A neighbor might complain about $32 feed bags while free protein gets harvested from established plants. That isn't a fantasy scenario. That's simply what a mature, layered perennial feed system looks like in practice. Every year, those plants grow bigger, produce more, and require noticeably less ongoing effort to maintain properly. The system compounds steadily, while costs shrink year after year without needing constant new investment. This builds something that feeds a flock directly without feeding an outside supply chain at all. That represents genuine self-sufficiency in the most practical, measurable sense possible for any small property. So, here is a genuine question worth sitting with. Which of these 13 plants would get planted first? Drop that answer in the comments below, since every single one gets read and genuinely considered afterward. If this video opened up new possibilities, hitting subscribe brings new proven homesteading strategies every single week. Avoiding these specific mistakes early tends to make the entire first year noticeably smoother overall. That kind of steady, compounding saving is worth more than any single dramatic month of good luck. Chickens don't actually need a factory to feed them properly across an entire year of laying. They need a grower smart enough to grow exactly what they actually need, close to home instead.